The reality of Grace Fellowship being one church in multiple locations is beautiful for lots of reasons. One of the reasons is that when we are generous, we get to multiply our energy in such a way that it can really make a significant impact. We've harnessed that opportunity through an initiative we started 2 years ago this weekend, Dollar Club. Dollar Club happens once a month when in our services we ask everyone in attendance to give $1 to a specific and identified cause. Our small investment individually has created a huge impact collectively, as over the last 2 years, we've collected and given away nearly $200,000, $1 at a time. We've provided teachers' salaries and all supplies to make an entire school year possible in the Central African Republic. We've provided food and other essentials to families in our neighborhoods who were experiencing crisis due to job loss or domestic violence. We've sent audio Bibles around the world. We've built and furnished homes for those in recovery and funded a medical clinic that serves those who have been victims of sex trafficking. And those are just a few examples of the dozens of real needs you've helped meet. Now let's take a moment to hear from some of the Dollar Club beneficiaries who want to thank you for the difference you've helped to make.
Well, we started with one home, and the awareness that was brought up about Jacob's House through Dollar Club. We've been able to grow to 3 addresses now. We had the potential of helping 5 men in recovery when we started, and now we have the potential of helping 15. Thank you, Grace Fellowship.
So what we were using a small tuk-tuk that normally would only hold about 4 adults, and we were squeezing in 2 adults and 12 kids, and so by Grace Fellowship through the Dollar Club donating the money to us, we were able to buy a very large commercial-sized tuk-tuk, and it was customized. Like, they added benches for all of our kids to be able to ride safely. It has a cover on top, so when it rains or it's really sunny, actually getting used a lot, and it's being used 6 days a week. So we're using it Monday through Saturday.
It's not something that we take for granted, and we're just blessed by that over and over and over.
Thank you, Grace Fellowship.
Dollar Club is just a mechanism, but generosity is in the DNA of Christians and reflects the character of Jesus. When we make generosity not just a one-time event, but a consistent part of our DNA, we help others in many, many ways, but we also help each other live more Jesus-centered lives.
Hey, Grace Online, we are so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Nicole, and what a great way to start off service celebrating the opportunity that you've had the past 2 years through Dollar Club. It's so great to see what God has done through the people who call Grace home. And today, on the 2nd year anniversary of Dollar Club, we thought the best way to celebrate that was by keeping the impact going. So at the same time, we're saying thanks for being generous. We're also saying let's keep being generous. This month, we're providing resources for development to people that are incarcerated, and we want to provide for them a library of books. And so, just like we always do, we're asking everyone that is watching right now to give $1, and our small investment individually makes a huge impact collectively. Right now, go ahead and take out your phones. You'll see a QR code on the screen, and we'll give you a chance to do that. Or if you're watching on your phone or your tablet, you can simply click on the Engage page link in the description, and you can find Dollar Club there. As you do that, we're gonna give you a chance to hear about this significant gift.
The men and women in our custody for years have only had used books, and so it's all been donation-based. And so we got our first donation of brand new books a few months ago, and they were so excited. And so it's just the small things that we oftentimes take for granted that mean so much to them. So you all will help us to buy more books for our library. Having the books and the book carts available to uniformed staff as well as civilian staff will allow for deputies to then have conversations with the men and women. Oftentimes when you're a part of the criminal justice system and you're working every day and you're seeing things happen, you fall into the trap of everyone's bad. You know, during the toughest times of my career, when I am looking at people and judging them, because I've been there as well, I have to take a step back and think, what stops me from having been in their shoes? And so growing up, my grandma used to always say, but God. And so that's always the first thing in my mind, but God. I work with a population that's stereotyped, they're marginalized, and they're oftentimes not given a second chance. And so I believe that that's my purpose.
Thank you so much for taking that time to give. Let's do this now. Let's stand together and sing about our God and how he takes our brokenness and brings beauty out of it. I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing is better than you. Show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. That's right. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. And there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. Beauty for ashes, you turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing, come on, better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing you're good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, yes, He is.
All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. Yeah. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Sing all my life. Oh, all my life you have been faithful. Oh, all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, and in darkness you are close like no other. I've known you as a father, yeah. I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life, and all my life you have been faithful. Yes, you have. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Hey, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. I'm surrendered now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. See your goodness is running after, it's running after, just keeps running. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now, I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, just keeps running after me. All my life, and all my life you have been faithful. Yes, you have. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'm gonna sing, yeah, of the goodness of God. Yeah. I'm gonna say, all my life, 'cause all my life you have been faithful. Yes, you have. And all my life you have been so, so good. when your day is long and the night is yours alone. When you're sure you've had enough of this life, hang on. Don't let yourself go, 'cause everybody cries, everybody hurts sometimes. Oh, everybody hurts. Everybody cries. Oh, everybody hurts sometimes.
Well, welcome to Grace this weekend, or whatever campus that you're at, or if you're watching with us online. Something that all of us can relate to, from skinning our knee as a child to ultimately losing a loved one. Everybody hurts. If I was to ask across the entire church, everybody to raise their hand if they've ever had significant pain and hurt in their life, 100% of the hands would go up. And they would go up quite regularly, because in the part of the story that we're in relationship to God, everybody hurts. People are gonna feel pain. We don't live in the Garden of Eden before the fall and rebellion of man against God, and we don't live in the new heavens and new earth someday where there will be no more pain and no more suffering. We live in the middle. We live in this time where we wait, those of us that are Christians, for Jesus to return, and during this time, there's sin, there's pain, there's disease, and it has shown up in our lives in lots of different ways that we have all felt. It showed up in the form of betrayal and loneliness and failure and loss and disappointment and rejection. It's been physical hurt, emotional hurt, psychological hurt, social hurt, spiritual hurt. Hurt happens, and it happens all the time. And the question is, what is it that we are supposed to do with it? And so what I want to just spend a few weekends thinking about, because again, it doesn't matter what you believe about God in this moment. You know that everybody hurts. You know that hurt happens. The question is, what can you do with it? And I want to suggest that those of us that are followers of Jesus, we have a unique opportunity to model something, to live something by faith that we can actually do with our hurt, that other people who come to follow Jesus can then do with theirs. And it's a goal that I want to present for the conversation over the next 4 weekends here at Grace. And if you've got your notes, you can go ahead and fill this in. This is the goal for what we want to think about. The goal is to heal the hurt in our life in such a way that the hurt actually becomes a catalyst for health. That what if there was a way to take the hurt in our life and have that hurt be a catalyst, be something that was an agent of growth and forward movement, something that helped us become ultimately more like Jesus. At no point over the course of this series do I want to trivialize or minimize your pain. I don't want to tell you it's not real. I don't want to tell you if you just had greater faith, you wouldn't feel it and it would all go away. No, I actually want to tell you something deeper than that. That if you'll walk by faith and if you'll trust Jesus, that this can actually happen. But you can't choose door number 1 of denying your hurt. And you can't choose door number 2 of being defined by your hurt. You have to choose door number 3 and deal with your hurt and take it to God. And if that can happen, you actually can come out a more healthier person through the hurt that's going to happen in your life. And the reason that that can happen is that in your weakness, Jesus can make you strong. The reason that that can happen is not because we live by some weird pop psychology or we live by simply mustering up our faith to get healthier on the other side. We believe that we have hope in every single situation, and that hope is a person named Jesus who can actually heal you. And so we know that hurt happens. But as a Christian, we come at that hurt and we say, God, what I want to do is have you redeem it. I want to move forward in a way that I actually come out healthier on the other side. I know this, that there are times, and I do my best, and our teaching team does our best to make sure that you don't feel this way. But I know there are times that there feels like a gap between a church service and your real life. And when we say things like live by faith and walk by the Spirit, you hear those as churchianity. You hear those as Christians speak, but you don't know what to do with them. And my hope over the next few weekends is to try to put skin on the idea of healing biblically as you actually walk by faith. What does that mean to go through the process of hurt happening to us? The vehicle that we want to use to do this is the Psalms. We want to spend some time looking at the Psalms, and I would encourage you over the course of this series to read through the Psalms. And before I even explain what the Psalms are, let me just tell you something that is at the core of my heart for this series. And please hear this. I have watched for many years when hurt happens in people's life, it becomes not the catalyst for them to run to God, but rather a catalyst to run from God. And I ask that you don't do that. I ask that you flip that script, that when hurt happens in your life, you run as fast as you can to God and process it the way he wants to. And that's why we want to spend the time in the Psalms. Because if you know what the Psalms are, they are a book, a collection of prayers, a collection of songs or of hymns, of poems. It's almost like a diary of human interaction with God. And as you read through them, there's something unique about them that we can sense and we can connect with. And so here's why we want to spend some time in the Psalms. I said it to you this way in your notes. In the Psalms, we get an accurate picture of the human heart in a way that we feel. The Bible over and over reveals this accurate picture of the human heart, but the Psalms are this diary, this poetic way of going, I feel that in my bones, I feel that in my soul, I feel that not just in my head, but in my heart. There's a vulnerability, a transparency. There's an anger, a sadness, a depression, a confusion, a frustration that we all can relate to. We read the Psalms and we go, I've felt like that. I've been there. I've felt like my prayers are just hitting the ceiling and coming right back to me. I can sense that. I resonate with that. In fact, the Psalms, depending on what scholar you read, they categorize them in either 5 or 7 different types of Psalms. And I want to remind you of 2 of those types of Psalms that actually get at the heart of this feeling, the condition of the human heart as we go through hurt and as we process it. I just put them up here that you can go and study these on your own, but the Psalms, 2 of the kinds are what are called lament Psalms and imprecatory Psalms. Now, some of you are familiar with the idea of lament. The lament Psalms that show up in Scripture are community and individual, and the community Psalms of lament deal with situations of national crisis. They prescribe problems faced by all the people of God in an area. The individual laments, they address various isolated troubles, problems faced by one member of the people of God. And it's a lament of saying, God, why is this happening to me? God, why won't you hear me? God, why won't you answer? God, God, hurt is happening and I need you. And I'm lamenting the fact that you're not doing anything. Imprecatory Psalms are interesting because they're Psalms that actually call for retribution. They're Psalms where the author is actually calling down calamity, destruction, and God's anger and judgment upon his enemies. We can relate to this because we all have prayed these at work before. God, would you please smite my boss? God, would you please get the person a couple cubes over? We've all had these moments where we feel like people are our enemies and we've seen evil prevail and we say, God, why won't you do anything? And there's something about the human heart that needs to be honest and vulnerable and say, God, this is what I wish you would do. And the Psalms have a way of doing that. And so we want to look at these Psalms and we want to do this through a grid that we learned in a few series back. You'll remember that we did a series called Letters to Our Younger Self. And in that series, we talked about how we all have to learn to process pain. And in that series, there was a framework that was given to us from the teaching team that I want to actually revisit and walk through a path to health in this series as we consider the Psalms. Now, to do that, what you need to recognize is that there needs to be a little bit of a caveat for this message and each message in this series. Oftentimes, messages on any given week could be thought of like a sitcom. And what I mean by that is in a sitcom, there is a tension that is brought to you, and by the end of the sitcom, the tension is solved. You get to the end and the family figured it out, or they solved the problem at work, or they solved the problem in the locker room or the team. This particular message and the next few messages are not going to be sitcom sermons. I'm not going to be able to solve some of the tensions in one talk. The goal is to try to build it over 4 talks to bring us through the entire path, which means we need to stay connected to each and everything. I also think that in the same way that a sermon is not going to solve the problem like a sitcom, I'm reminded that hurt doesn't end like a sitcom. Hurt's real, it lasts, it goes on, it doesn't have simple solutions. And so I ask that you stay locked into this whole series as we process this idea of saying, how can the hurt be a catalyst that actually becomes something for health? I worked with a guy when I first graduated from college in the corporate world. He was several years older than me. Probably at the time he was in his early 30s, and he had been dating a girl and was in a long-term relationship with her. They had dated for years. And he was telling me how she was ready to go to the next step, and she was ready for him to propose and get married. And he knew that. He could feel the pressure. He could feel that that's what she wanted. And he kept saying to me, she at some point is going to ask me the question, do you want to marry me? Are we committed to this? Is this going to go on? We've been together for a long, long time. What's going to happen? And he's telling me this story. And then he says, and I don't want her to ask, because when she does, I'm going to have to tell her I don't want to marry her. I don't want to marry her. And he said, I don't want to say those words out loud to her. I've thought them, I've sensed them, I've felt them, but I don't want to have to express those words out loud. Now, my friend was not alone, and you're probably someone that would resonate and say, there are certain things that you actually don't want to say out loud. Sometimes they might be superficial and sometimes they might be more serious, but here's just the truth with certain things. Here's what it is. Certain things are just really hard to say out loud. Once they go out into the atmosphere, it's like, I can't believe I had to say that. It's when your spouse calls and says, I took the car in. It's gonna cost $1,500 to have it repaired. And you don't want to have to say that because you know how the person on the other end is going to receive that. It's when your son or daughter comes to you and says, Mom, Dad, I've decided post-college I'm going to move to the other side of the U.S. And I know that breaks your heart, but that's what I'm going to do. It's when you're a little kid and you say, Mom, I lied to you. I was the one who broke it. I broke the thing. But I was just terrified to say it out loud. The stakes get more serious sometimes when someone says to you, I have to tell you, you're not getting the job. Someone comes to you and says, you have cancer. Someone comes to you and says, your child's not gonna make it. Someone comes to you and says, I'm leaving your dad. They're hard words to say out loud into the atmosphere. And sometimes those are hard because we know that when we say them, they hurt people. They make the situation complicated. There's pain involved. They're just difficult to articulate because of the heaviness of what those mean and the implication of those. But I want to suggest, as difficult as it is to say those types of words into the atmosphere, words that can hurt other people, words that are heavy to say out loud, I want to say that sometimes the hardest words to say out loud for us or people are to admit that we're hurting. To say deep down, I'm not good. I'm in pain. I'm wounded. I can't go forward. I am struggling. I am in a bad place. I'm not sure I can take another day. I am hurting so bad I can't get up. I am in pain. And I would say that we are often trained not to say that, not to admit it. I think one of the things that's hard to say out loud is to admit that we are actually having pain. And I would go so far as to say this is even subtly made worse in this way. We send messages sometimes to people that say, don't acknowledge your hurt. We even accidentally do this in a way that makes it more complicated for people to be able to say out loud that they're hurting. We've made talking about particularly mental and emotional and relational pain taboo. It's interesting that if you see someone with a cast, you have no problem asking them what happened. In fact, we long to hear the story of how they got hurt or what went on, and we hope it's funny or we hope that there's a story there. But if someone starts to talk about the emotional pain that they're going through, we say things like, wow, that is really personal. Sometimes they leave and we mock them. Sometimes we say, well, I didn't really want all of that. If we're Christians, sometimes we say, well, maybe you're hurting so much because you don't have enough faith. I was even thinking about the way that we train people to learn from a young age that hurting is a bad thing. I did it this weekend to my youngest son. He fell down, he got hurt, and immediately I looked at him and Cooper, and I said, Cooper, you're not hurt, get up, you're fine. Cooper, stop crying, you're fine. Get up, Cooper. Kelly looked at me. No, he's hurt, Keith. It's okay if he cries. But somehow, deep down in my soul, I want to accidentally, or I don't even know that I'm doing it, I accidentally want to teach him as a 7-year-old little boy that somehow if he's in pain or if he's crying, he shouldn't admit it. Or that somehow he wasn't strong enough to navigate the fall. Now you might look and say, come on, Keith, that's a little bit dramatic. Kids can be dramatic and we need to teach them, and I'm sure we can. But I just wonder the subtle message that over and over we tell to people, whatever you do, don't admit that you're in pain. Don't admit it. And to be honest, some of the worst people about it are Christians. It somehow becomes so taboo to admit that we're fallen, screwed up people in need of God to help us. And how strange is it that we might admit to one another in a small group or in a prayer time that we're hurting and in pain. But somehow if we do, our faith must not be big enough. And yet what I want to suggest this weekend is that the beginning of the path to healing through your hurt is actually saying out loud, you're hurting. Admitting it. To get after this, I want to invite you to go in your Bible to Psalm 86. Psalm 86. And I want us to consider how we need to look at an example of a man who had more trauma probably than most of us have had. A man who had trauma in his family. Literally family full of vengeance and betrayal. Murder plans, dysfunction, loss of a child. He had trauma that he had caused through adultery and murder. He had trauma from outsiders, political enemies, people who wanted him dead that were outside of his home. He had hurt and pain points all over the place. And you know him as King David. King David writes a bunch of the Psalms. And in these Psalms, we get a look at his diary, his heart, his prayers, his poems to God, his songs to God. And this is a very standard poem, a very standard psalm for David. And what I want you to look for this week in this particular psalm is David's honesty. David's real admission about what he's dealing with in his life. Now, scholars debate what the actual situation was that David was processing. And the truth was his life was so screwed up, it could have been at a lot of different times in his life that he wrote this. But he writes this and he cries out to God regarding his situation. Psalm 86, we'll go through the whole thing. Hear me, Lord, and answer me. His dependence upon the Lord, his move towards God, him saying to God, God, I need you to heal me. I need you to help me. I need you to move me to health through this, and by faith, I'm going to call upon you. Hear me, Lord, and answer me. He continues and says, for I am poor and needy. The first of specifics that he calls out. He calls out about his current situation that he feels desperate. that he lacks the resources to be able to move forward through the situation. Have you ever been in a situation where what you feel is, I don't have the means to solve it? And David very specifically says, God, how I feel in my soul right now is I'm desperate, I'm poor, and I'm needy. I need a Hail Mary. I need help. I need an answer. I am hurting and I have nowhere else to go. But I'm gonna tell you, I'm poor and I'm needy. He continues as he moves through the psalm. Guard, now he moves to a condition of his heart he needs to make sure is protected so he can move towards health. Guard my life because I'm literally being chased down to be killed. He's specific to say, I actually need your protection to keep me from dying. This is some weird equivalent of the way we sort of like pray this soft prayer all the time of, God, keep us safe on the road. But he's saying here, I need to stay alive. I need you to protect me, for I am faithful to you. Save your servant who trusts in you. You are my God. You'll see this connection between his honest vulnerability of his need and his dependence upon God to fix that need. He continues as he writes to us, have mercy. Now he moves to a different need, a different specific call out in his life. Mercy, God, I need you to spare me. I need you to help me. I need you to make sure I get through this. I need you to think of me very uniquely. In essence, he says, God, I need you to see me. I'm hurting right now, God, and I need your mercy. Have mercy on me, for I call on you. Here it is, all day long. God, I'm hurting and I'm calling, but you're not picking up the other end of the line. And then he continues as he moves through. Bring joy to your servant. Isn't it true when hurt happens that one of the first things to go is joy? One of the first things that goes is enthusiasm for life and passion and happiness and a real trust that God is in control. And he says, God, I got enemies chasing me. I need mercy. I'm poor and I'm needy. And you know what else I need from you right now specifically? I need joy. I need to feel hope in my soul. And he keeps going. He continues as he writes this. You, Lord, are forgiving and good. He goes to the character of God, abounding in love to all who call you. And then he says it again. Hear my prayer. I need you, Lord. Listen to my cry for mercy. When I'm in distress, he again names the emotion that he feels. When I'm in distress, I call to you because you answer me. He says, I feel lost. I feel distressed. I feel hopeless, and I'm gonna keep calling out to you. He continues to write about his reality. Among the gods, he goes to, again, the character and nature of God. Among the gods, there is none like you, Lord. No deeds can compare with yours. All the nations you have made will come and worship before you, Lord. They will bring glory to your name. Do you almost feel him convincing himself of this? You ever been praying a prayer and you've actually been trying to tell yourself good theology in the middle of that prayer? God, I know you hear me. I know you do. I'm gonna say it till I believe it. God, I know you're in control. God, I know that no one can compare to you. God, I know your resume is incredible. God, I know you're faithful. I don't feel it. And you're trying to talk yourself into that? David's saying, I'm hurting. I know I have nowhere else to go, and I need to be reminded of who you are. He continues to lay out these specifics. For you are great and do marvelous deeds. You alone are God. He moves to a different need. Teach me your way, Lord, that I may rely on your faithfulness. He's like, in the middle of my hurt, and this is huge, guys, in the middle of your hurt, you got to go. I know God is faithful whether I feel it or not. So help me walk in that faithfulness. He says, teach me to believe that you're still faithful. Give me, I need you to put inside of me an undivided heart that I may fear your name. In other words, he's like, I'm losing confidence in you and I need you to rebuild my faith. I need you to keep me strong right now, God. And then he continues to move through. I will praise you, Lord my God. He's like, he's convincing himself again. With all my heart, I will glorify your name forever. For great is your love towards me. Oh, I know it, God. Great is your love. You've delivered me from the depths, from the realm of the dead. He's like, okay, I know who you are. And then he comes back and he gives some more specifics of what he needs. He's like, oh yeah, because of all this, let me just let you know, there's arrogant foes and they're attacking me, God. There are ruthless people, and they are trying to kill me. And they have no regard for you. He's like, there are some bad dudes that are after me. They don't care what happens to them, and they want to kill me, and I need your help. And then he comes back as he gets ready to finish here in the last. But you, Lord, he comes back to God. But you are compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness. Turn to me and have mercy on me. Show me your strength on behalf of your servant. Save me, protect me, because I serve you just as my mother did. Give me a sign. Give me a chance to see your goodness, that my enemies, he names it again, may see it and be put to shame for you, Lord. For you have helped me and have comforted me. What I want us to note in the middle of this psalm, and we'll see it in the other psalms that we work through, is David didn't write this psalm. Y'all read it with me and saw it. David didn't go, God, life is hard. Could use your help. Thanks for being good. Amen. There's nothing wrong with that prayer. But I would suggest it lacks something that many of us don't want to do in the middle of our hurt. It lacks something that somehow we've been uncomfortable with doing. It lacks something that many of us believe is a bad idea to do in the middle of our pain. And I want to suggest that this is the beginning of your path to health. And David does it all throughout the Psalms, and he does it in this particular psalm. And here's what he does to God, and here's what we need to do to God, and we need to do to others. We need to say our specific hurt. We need to articulate our specific hurt. It is one thing to say, I am not okay. It is one thing to say, I'm wounded. It is one thing to say, I feel like God is a million miles away. It is another thing to articulate the specifics of that. And there are lies that keep you from doing that. Lies that would tell you, if I was a stronger Christian, this wouldn't be happening to me. Lies that would say, you know what, I have shame that I even feel this way. Lies that tell you should just be quiet because you're weak. Lies that tell you believe no one should be hurt this bad who's a Christian. Lies that would say, I'm letting God down. And yet what I want to tell you is like David, where he says, distress, enemies, guard, foes, mercy. You and I, in the middle of our hurt happening, need to say the specific hurt. There is something powerful to saying the real, true pain point. Specifics in dealing with what you're dealing with. The specifics of saying those people hurt me and their names. The specifics of saying I'm hurting because of what I did to myself. I'm hurting because things are out of control. So I'm saying your hurt, that you say it out loud with a level of specificity, and you say, I am hurt that boss fired me. I am hurt that my dad left that marriage. I am hurt that God chose to give my mom cancer. I am hurt that I worked so hard and didn't get rewarded. I am hurt that I am watching my parents die. I am hurt that friend betrayed me. I am hurt that my prayers don't feel answered. I am hurt because I can't overcome this addiction. I am hurt that person who was supposed to be there for me isn't. I am hurt that I can't have victory. Say it out loud. Articulate it in your bones. David said, my enemies, I need your mercy. I need your power, God. I need your hope. I need you to guard me. I feel poor and needy. Don't say, life is hard. Say, I don't want to be a mom right now. It sucks. Don't say work is difficult. Say, I wish I didn't have that job. Don't say money's a little tight. Say, if God doesn't come through, we can't pay the bills. Articulate it in real time with a specificity to feel it in your bones. David said in very real ways, God, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I am needing. I've said this to you before. Your pain and your hurt, when it is not treated, will be transferred. And part of treating your pain is naming it. Naming your hurt. David, I have arrogant people that are trying to kill me. God, I need you to protect me. They're after me. I'm going to die. God, I am poor and needy. God, I need your mercy. God, I need you to teach me. God, I need this. God, I am hurting here. Say it out loud. Say specifically what God is doing. And what I want to spend the rest of our time talking about is, why does this matter? Why is it that we see the Psalms and these diaries, if you will, the specificity of what David and other authors would call out? Why does that matter in our healing process? I want to suggest 3 things that we can think of in connection to the Psalm, and certainly in connection to things as I've counseled and pastored people over the years. And you see this first one so specifically on why we need to say our specific hurt. Note this, please. When we say things out loud and when we admit what is going on, here's what we need to know. Number 1, we're not just trying to get the pain or hurt off our chests, but we're desiring to get our eyes on God. Saying it, please, saying it is not just giving you a chance to wallow. You don't say it so you can just grovel in your pain or complain. David, over and over, as he articulated these specific things, the moment he said them, he ran to God. He said them and he ran to God. He said them and he went back to God. We say these things because we recognize we're helpless in and of ourselves to deal with the hurt. And so we've got to get it not just off our chest, but we've got to get our eyes upward into the place of God. We've got to say, God, I need you. God, you're my only hope. God, you need to hear me. People are like, Keith, why would you suggest, and we'll talk about this next weekend, why would you suggest counseling? Why would you suggest just saying this stuff out loud? Like, what's the point? It's just words. And I get it. There's times in our life where we want to understand, why does this matter? I can remember being, most of you know one of my degrees is in chemistry, and so I had to go really far in math in college. Like far enough in math in college where the numbers went away and they were all letters. And there were multiple times where I sat in math classes and I was the student who raised my hand and I said, why does this matter? When are we, Dr. When are we ever going to use this? What is this? Why are you teaching us this? What is it actually going to help me do? Some of you are saying, what is admitting this out loud actually going to help me do? What is saying the specific reality actually going to do? It's going to remind you you need God. It's going to take your eyes and say, I cannot solve this without God and his people. It's going to say that I don't need to complain about this. I need to have God redeem it and heal it in me. It's going to drive you to a really important component of your healing, which is prayer. And in prayer, you're going to be reminded that God is your Abba Father, that he listens, that he cares, that you're his kid, that he wants best for you, that he's with you. In the middle of being driven to God, you're going to be driven to his word. And you're going to be reminded that God has never forsaken you, that God is working for the good of all those who believe, that God is still sovereign and he's still on his throne. In the middle of it, you're going to look and you're going to go, I need to be driven to think about who I am in Christ. Because I feel dirty, but I'm forgiven. I feel hopeless, but I am a co-heir with Christ. I feel useless, but I am an ambassador for God. I am saved and I am sealed. And there is nothing that can happen to me that can make God love me less. That in the middle of my hurt, that I don't feel loved by God. I don't feel accepted and I don't want to get up and I don't want to pray. That I need to say what is hurting me because it doesn't just get it off my chest. It gets my eyes on God. And David in the middle of his confession said, God, hear me. I got to put my hope in you, man. And I'm telling you, one of the ways you do that is you articulate your specific reality for what it is. And here's what we find out. We find out that we don't have the strength to solve those problems without God anyways. We need to say our specific hurt. We need to put it out there because it helps us get our eyes on God. Number two, it's really hard to address and advance past what you won't actually admit. works really hard to address the way you need to and advance past what you won't actually admit. You notice that in David's psalm, he needed a lot of things from God. He needed help for his distress. He needed help for the fact that he was poor and needy. He needed help from his enemies. He needed to be taught some things. He needed to be guarded. And all of those require a different reality, a different tool to navigate the human experience, a different act of faith from God. You know this in other areas of your life. I know this because I'm terrible with cars. And when the car breaks, I just say the car's broken. Someone says, what's wrong with the car? It doesn't work. What about it doesn't work? I don't know. The engine light thingy's on and it doesn't work. And I take it to a person, and you know what they do? They don't just look at me and say, it broke. You know what they do? They specifically find out what the problem is. And you know why they specifically find out what the problem is? Because the problems on your car that are unique require different tools and different approaches and a different kind of maintenance. At least that's what I've been told. I don't know if that's true, but I think that's what happens. Because your car needs to be diagnosed for exactly what it is so that when it happens, they can fix it and they can give it back to you so it can be driven like it was supposed to be driven. And the same exact reality is true with you. I meet Christians all the time and I say, how are you doing? I'm okay. What's going on? Life's just a little hard. Well, what's up? Family's tough. No, family's not tough. Your 15-year-old is suicidal. Name it. Name it. Because we can't address it and we can't advance past it until we actually admit what it is and say it specifically. What's going on? Well, family's just hard. Yeah, family's hard for everybody. What's going on? Well, just parenting. Say it. Your 20-year-old walked away from Jesus. And they don't want anything to do with you about it, and they don't want anything to do with church, and they certainly don't want anything to do with God. And it hurts like hell every night. Say it. Deal with it. Put it out there. Well, this is hard. A friend of mine, this is tough. Yeah, what? The friendships are hard. No. Say it. They lied to you and stole money from you. And you feel betrayed. I'm not talking about gossip. I'm not talking about wallowing it. I'm talking about naming it for what it is so you can go through the emotions of actually what is going on. And you know this. Think about it on the positive. I heard a pastor say one time, he said, when you tell someone you love them, don't just tell them you love them, tell them you love them because. I love you because you're so kind. I love you because you're beautiful. I love you because you're gracious. I love you because you pray. I love you, and not because we should love people simply for what they do, but to be specific about the ways that they love them, to build them up. Why? Because the specificity speaks to their emotional reality. The specificity of your pain speaks to what you need to move past it. David said, I'm in distress. I need guarded. I've got enemies. I'm poor. I'm needy. I need taught. I need a sign. I need these things specifically so I can move forward. But he had to admit what he needed from God in a very clear way. So say it. Not just to get it off your chest, but to get your eyes on God. Why? Because you want to advance and you want to address it, so you need to admit it. This is the process you have to go through of saying it out loud. Number 3. The third reason you need to do it is because the specifics will provide perspective. Again, I mentioned this as we work through the psalm that over and over after David stated his need, he went to the character of God. He stated the need, he went to the character of God. He stated the need, he went to the character of God because he saw the problem was really a big problem and he needed God. But here's what I want to say. And again, I don't want to minimize anybody's hurt, but here's what happens when you honestly name your hurt. You actually see whether your hurt is a big deal or not when you live through it. When you live through it, you get perspective. My oldest had his birthday recently, and for his birthday, he wanted to go to this boxing match in Cleveland. And so tried to be a cool dad and a good dad, take him to this boxing match. And we went, and on the way up, we went through the hometown that I used to live in. And I said, hey, I'm gonna take you to this restaurant that I used to go to growing up as a kid almost every weekend after church. And it was a fried chicken place, and so Caden loves fried chicken, and so he said, I'm in. And so we went, and as soon as I walked in, I'm like, man, this place is much smaller than I remember it. And we started eating the food, and I was like, this is not as good as I remember it. This is just different. Like I went to the room that we would sit in after church. I'm like, this doesn't feel the same. And as I lived through it and processed it, I got perspective about what it really was. Have you ever had to say out loud the thing that you're mad about to your spouse only to realize it's not a big deal to be mad about it? Some of you are like, I've never had that happen. You're a liar. Right? See, here's what happens when you actually articulate it. Sometimes you find out, oh my gosh, I am even more hurt than I thought I was. This is a bigger deal than my emotions and identity have been messed up about this for years. Sometimes you realize, oh my gosh, this is really an issue because of my insecurity. Sometimes you realize, you know what? Now that I've said this, I realize that I definitely not only need God, I need therapy. You step into it and you realize it's too big or it's really not that big at all, but you need the perspective to live through it. So name it. And then you name it and you go, oh yeah, I am putting a lot of emotions into that, and that is really not that bad. And other times you name it and you go, I haven't been giving that the attention it needs. I should have went and seen somebody years ago for that. Perspective. And again, what'll happen is when you get that perspective, you'll start to realize that while your problem and your hurt that has happened to you is really big, the perspective that you'll ultimately get is God is bigger. And that God is able to address it. But you have to name it specifically. The path to health begins with saying your specific hurt, so that you can get not just it off your chest, but your eyes on God, so you can address and advance it as you admit it, and you can get perspective. Now, I know that some of this, for some of you, you're saying this sounds a lot like popular psychology or sociology that I could get at a university. And I want to say, no, it is not that at all. Because the answer and remedy for all of us who are Christians is not simply talking to the wind about this. It's not simply hoping that things can get better. It's that we go to a real person named Jesus who we believe can heal and give us hope. And here's why we believe that about Jesus. We would say that Jesus understands and can handle our hurt. We realize that the Christ who died for us is the suffering servant who experienced temptation and pain and hurt in a very real way. That when you go to Jesus and say, I hurt, he goes, I know. Because I lost a friend and I cried. Jesus goes, I know that you're physically hurt because I was beaten and my beard was pulled out and they put a crown of thorns upon my head. I know what it feels like to be lost because I had people betray me relationally. And I know what it feels like to feel like you're a failure in that moment, because when I was on the cross, the wrath of God poured out upon me and I said, my God, why have you forsaken me? Jesus understands. You're not talking to someone that's like, I can't relate. He's like, I can relate. I understand your hurt. And it's not just that he's like a friend that's like, well, I understand, wish I could do something. He's also the risen Savior who overcame death. He's also the one that can go, you know what, blind person, see. Water, I can walk. Water, wine. Dead, come back to life. Lay down his life, raise it up. You're not just talking to anyone, you're talking to the one who spoke and creation happened. And you've got to admit out loud the reality of what you're dealing with and say, I'm not just going to anyone, I'm going to the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Alpha and the Omega. And so I'm going to tell him what I am feeling. The first part to being able to say I'm going to move, to have my hurt be healed to a path of health, is I say it out loud. You're smart enough people to know what I want you to do this weekend then. What I want you to do this weekend is something that might be difficult, but I want you to actually go through this process in some regard. I want you to name very specifically one of your hurts out loud this week. Maybe you would name it out loud to a friend. Maybe you would name it out loud and begin to journal about it. Maybe you would even be so bold and unique to put it and say, I'm a person that has struggled with this on social media, and you wouldn't be looking for people just to, oh, woe is you, but you would be saying, but I have hope in Christ in this. we're often embarrassed to say out loud what we deal with. I'm probably like the worst person in the church to give this talk. My Enneagram is an 8, which means I'm a challenger, and one of the things that 8s hate is we hate vulnerability. I love control. I love being able to know the answer. I love being able to solve problems. I don't like people thinking I'm weak. I don't like people thinking I don't know the answer. There's a lot of people that trust me to kind of take them where to go. And so I always get nervous that if I'm frail and don't know what to do, then the rest of the people won't know what to do and I'll lead us in a bad way. And what I've had to learn through that process of leadership and my own faith is I can't lead you to healthy places if I'm not healthy. And I can't be healthy unless I actually admit what's bothering me, what I'm hurt by, what I'm dealing with. And God continues to teach me that sometimes, Keith, you have to, from a place of strength, actually be vulnerable and be weak. I remember when I was a kid, I used to love going to my grandma's house and staying with her. My grandma was a godly woman. She was the only grandparent I knew. All of my other grandparents had passed away either when I was 3 or younger or before I was born. So my mom's mom was the only grandparent I had in my life. She loved the Lord and she was great. She was unique because she never got a driver's license. So when we would go to her house, she would often take us to the mall, but we'd have to ride a bus. We'd ride the bus and we'd go to Woolworths. You know, nobody knows who that is, go Google it. We'd go to Woolworths and then we would go watch a movie and we'd go to lunch and then we'd come back and on Sunday we would go to church and my grandma would play cards and she was a blast, just salt of the earth kind of lady. And one time I broke something in her house and I didn't want to tell grandma I broke something in her house. And so she kept asking me and she kept grilling me and she kept grilling me and she kept grilling me and she kept wanting to try to get me to admit it. And she kept wanting me to say it specifically. This is what you did, this is what you did. And I kept trying to deny it and dance around it. And finally I said, Grandma, I broke the thing. And she looked at me and she said, I know. I said, if you knew, why'd you want me to tell you? Why were you pressing me so hard that I would tell you? And my grandma said this, and I remember this. I was little and she said, I wanted you to say it out loud because by doing so, you would grow up a little bit. What she was saying was admitting it is a part of maturing. Admitting it and saying it out loud and dealing with it is a part of healing the relationship and the process and moving forward. Let me tell you something you already know if you're a Christian. God already knows you're hurt. He's fully aware. You're not gonna like shock him and he's gonna be like, really? He doesn't want you to tell him specifically so you can inform him. He wants you to tell you specifically, him specifically, because he cares about you and he wants to grow you up. And he loves you. God has this way of when we, oh my gosh, it's almost like the Bible says, confess and admit and own and repent. Acknowledge our pain, acknowledge our failures, acknowledge our hurt. That when we do that, somehow God in his faith, through his spirit, through his word, and through his personhood, grow us to be more like him. Hurt happens to all of us. And our goal is that we would take that hurt and somehow that hurt would be a catalyst to health. And the first thing we need to do with it is we need to admit honestly and state our specific hurt. Here's what I want to do. I want to ask everybody wherever they are, at home, at another campus, here right now, to go ahead and just bow their head. I want you to bow your head, close your eyes, and I want to just give you a moment to be honest with the Lord right now. A moment for you to process a specific hurt. I don't want this to be odd and awkward for anyone, but maybe even right now as you're just sitting wherever you're sitting, you just need to put your hands out in front of you in a position of surrender to God, a position of vulnerability, and just say to God in your heart, to him right now, God, this is what I'm hurting with, and be specific. God, this is what hurts right now, and tell him. And in so doing, acknowledge that you need him. Acknowledge that you don't just want to stay there, but you want to be healthy. You want to be godly. You want to be Christ-like. God in heaven, I thank you that you do know. There's nowhere we can go where you're not there, but even in that, you still want us to tell you. And in so doing, you meet us faithfully. God, help us to recognize that there is this reality that you are tender enough to care and love us in our hurt, but powerful enough to heal us. God, help us not be afraid to say out loud with a specific reality to you and even to others what we're feeling, what we're dealing with, and how we're hurting. Make us a church that leans into you so that we can be more like you. We pray this in the name of Christ. Amen.
We all probably know someone who is hurting and who could benefit from this message or maybe even this series. So I would encourage you to share today's message with them and invite them to join you next week. If you are new to church or trying to understand what you believe about religion and faith, I would like to invite you to join us for Explore class. This is a 6-week class at our Jefferson campus, and it's an opportunity for you to learn more about the Bible and ask all your questions that you might have. Thanks again for joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next Sunday.